The clock on Maya Johnson's dashboard read 10:43 p.m. as she turned onto Oakwood Avenue. Her shoulders ached from sitting hunched over her desk all day, and all she wanted was a hot shower and her bed. The street was quiet, most houses dark with just a few porch lights breaking up the night. Maya rolled her neck from side to side, trying to work out the kinks. 15 hours at the office had left her drained, but that was life in intelligence analysis. When national security was on the line, nobody cared about your work-life balance. She slowed as she approached the four-way stop at Maple Street, her tires crunching on loose gravel. After coming to a complete halt, she checked all directions and continued on her way. That's when she noticed the flash of blue and red lights in her rearview mirror. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, signaling and pulling to the curb. Maya knew the drill. She turned off the engine, placed her hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and waited. She watched in her side mirror as two officers approached, one tall and broad-shouldered, the other shorter with a military-style haircut. The taller officer tapped on her window. Maya pressed the button to lower it. "License and registration, please," he said, his flashlight beam hitting her eyes. "Of course, officer," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. "My registration is in the glove box, and my wallet is in my purse on the passenger seat. I'm going to reach for them now, okay?" The officer nodded, and Maya moved slowly, hyper-aware of every movement. She handed over her documents. "Do you know why I pulled you over tonight, ma'am?" the officer asked. His nameplate read Brennan. "No, sir, I don't," Maya answered honestly. "You rolled through that stop sign back there," Officer Brennan said, his tone suggesting he'd caught her in a lie. Maya blinked in surprise. "Officer, I'm certain I came to a complete stop." The second officer, whose nameplate read Taylor, stepped closer. "We both saw you roll through it. Had a few drinks tonight?" "No, sir. I'm coming home from work." "I haven't had anything to drink." Officer Taylor leaned down, making a show of sniffing the air. "I can smell alcohol coming from the vehicle." Maya's heart began to race. She knew there was no alcohol in her car or on her breath. She'd been drinking nothing but coffee and water all day. "Officer, that's not possible. I haven't been drinking." "Step out of the vehicle, please," Officer Brennan ordered, his hand moving to rest on his belt. Maya complied, stepping carefully onto the pavement. The night air felt suddenly cold against her skin. "Walk heel to toe along this line," Officer Taylor instructed, pointing to the edge of the sidewalk. Maya followed his instructions perfectly, walking the line, touching her nose, reciting the alphabet backward. She knew she was passing every test because there was nothing in her system to impair her. "Look," she said after completing the tests, "I understand you're doing your job, but I really did stop at that sign, and I haven't been drinking. Is there a problem with my license or registration?" Officer Brennan's face hardened. "You don't tell us how to do our job, understand?" Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Something wasn't right here. She slowly reached for her phone in her back pocket. "I'd like to record this interaction, if that's okay," she said. Officer Taylor stepped forward quickly. "Put that phone away now." "I have the right to record," Maya began. "She's resisting," Officer Taylor called out, grabbing Maya's arm. "What? No, I'm not," Maya protested, but Officer Brennan was already pulling her other arm behind her back. The cold metal of handcuffs bit into her wrists as Officer Brennan recited, "You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest." Maya stood stunned as they led her to the patrol car. Through the window, she could see her phone still sitting on the driver's seat of her car. As the door closed on her in the back of the police cruiser, she took deep breaths, forcing herself to think clearly. This wasn't the first time she faced prejudice, but it was the first time it had escalated so quickly. As the patrol car pulled away from the curb, Maya stayed out the window at her abandoned vehicle, mentally preparing herself for what was to come. What these officers didn't know was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. The holding cell smelled of bleach and something else Maya couldn't quite place. She sat on the hard metal bench, back straight against the cold wall, watching the clock tick past midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. Each time an officer walked by, she asked politely for her phone call. Each time she was told, "Soon." Her wrists stung where the handcuffs had dug in. She'd asked for them to be loosened during the ride to the station, but Officer Brennan had turned up the radio instead. Now, under the harsh fluorescent lights, she could see the red marks they'd left behind. "Johnson," a voice called finally. A female officer Maya hadn't seen before stood at the cell door. "You can make your call now." Maya was led to a wall-mounted phone. She knew exactly who she should call. Her agency had protocols for situations like this. But something told her to play this close to the chest. She dialed her sister instead. "Tanya," she said when her sister's groggy voice answered. "I need your help." 30 minutes later, Maya watched through the window of the processing area as Tanya arrived with a man in a suit, her neighbor Rob, who happened to be a lawyer. Maya felt a rush of relief seeing their familiar faces amid the sterile police station environment. "My client has been held for nearly 4 hours without being properly processed," Rob was saying to the desk sergeant. "Either charge her formally or release her immediately." Officer Taylor appeared from a back room. "Oh, look who thinks she's special enough to call in the cavalry," he said, looking at Maya. "Your friend here was driving under the influence and became combative when questioned." "That's completely false," Maya said, keeping her voice level despite her rising anger. Tanya stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. "My sister doesn't drink. Period. And she's never been combative a day in her life." "That's not what we saw," Officer Brennan said, joining them. He dropped a clipboard on the counter. "Sign here to acknowledge your charges and you can post bail." Rob picked up the paperwork, scanning it quickly. Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and now a DUI charge. Based on what evidence? "She refused a breathalyzer," Officer Taylor said with a smirk. "I was never offered one," Maya countered, feeling her professional training kick in. "Document everything, stay factual." "It's your word against 2 police officers, ma'am," Officer Brennan said. 2 hours later, after Rob had navigated the bureaucratic maze of posting bail, Maya walked out of the station into the pre-dawn darkness. Her car had been impounded, so Tanya drove them all back to Maya's apartment. "You need to document everything," Rob advised as they sat in Maya's kitchen. "Those marks on your wrists, write down every detail you can remember about tonight." Maya nodded, already mentally composing her account. "They were lying, Tanya. I stopped at that sign. I wasn't drinking. They made it all up." Tanya reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I know. But why?" Maya shook her head. "I don't know. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong skin color. But they picked the wrong person." After Rob left, promising to start working on her case first thing in the morning, Maya took careful photographs of her wrists and the small cut on her arm from where she'd been shoved against the patrol car. She typed up a detailed account of everything that had happened, saving it to a secure folder. Then she did something she rarely did, mixed her personal and professional lives. She sent an encrypted message to her supervisor, security incident to report, potential compromise situation, request secure meeting tomorrow. She knew the agency would take this seriously. A false arrest could create vulnerabilities, blackmail, pressure points, or worse, public exposure. Her security clearance required her to report incidents like this immediately. As dawn broke, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the emotions she'd been holding back: anger, humiliation, fear. She let a few tears fall before wiping them away. Getting emotional wouldn't help her now. What would help was being methodical, being smart, and using every resource at her disposal. The officers thought they were dealing with an ordinary woman they could push around. They had no idea who they were really up against. Maya sat in a small conference room at her workplace, 3 people facing her across the table. Her supervisor, Thomas, had brought in the agency's legal counsel and security officer. She just finished explaining the events of that night. "They filed what?" Thomas asked, leaning forward in his chair. Maya pushed the copy of the police report across the table. "Take a look yourself." "According to Officers Brennan and Taylor, I was slurring my words, had bloodshot eyes, and tried to hit Officer Taylor when he approached my vehicle." The security officer, a woman with steel-gray hair named Patricia, scanned the document. "This is concerning on multiple levels." "It's completely fabricated," Maya said, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. "I've included photos of the marks from the handcuffs and my initial statement from that night." The legal counsel, a quiet man named Raj, nodded as he reviewed Maya's documentation. "You did everything by the book," he said. "Smart move calling your sister instead of us directly. Less trackable." Thomas rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Brennan and Taylor. Why do those names sound familiar?" Patricia typed something into her tablet. "Because we've heard them before. 3 years ago, another employee, Davis in Communications, had a similar run-in. Different precinct, though." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You think they're targeting government employees?" "Unlikely," Raj said. "More likely they're just bad cops with a pattern. Let me make some calls." Over the next 2 weeks, Maya tried to maintain her normal routine, but the upcoming court date loomed over everything. She had a preliminary hearing scheduled, and her lawyer Rob called with updates almost daily. "They're pushing hard on this case," he told her one evening as she paced her living room. "Usually minor charges like these get pleaded down or dismissed, especially for first-time offenders with clean records. But these officers seem determined." "Any luck with the body cam footage?" Maya asked. "That's the strange part," Rob replied. "The department claims there were technical issues with both officers' cameras that night. Convenient, right?" But Rob had found something else. Security footage from a gas station on the corner of the intersection where Maya had allegedly run the stop sign. The grainy video clearly showed her car coming to a complete stop. Meanwhile, Maya's agency had been working quietly behind the scenes. Patricia had compiled a dossier on both officers, complaints filed, arrest patterns, testimony histories. The picture it painted wasn't pretty. "They target single drivers, usually minorities, late at night on quiet streets," Patricia explained during a secure briefing. "Most people can't fight the charges effectively. They take the plea deal to avoid court costs." "But why push so hard on my case?" Maya asked. Thomas slid another folder across the table. "We think it's this. Officer Brennan is up for promotion to sergeant. Your case would be another drug bust in his record, minority woman with alcohol and attitude, resisting arrest. It fits their narrative." Maya opened the folder to find photos of Officer Brennan shaking hands with the police chief at various community events. The last photo showed him receiving a commendation for outstanding fieldwork in DUI prevention. "They're building careers on false arrests," she said quietly. "And they picked the wrong woman to target this time," Raj added, a rare smile crossing his face. "We've prepared your legal team with everything they need. The agency can't be officially involved, you understand." "But unofficially?" Maya asked. Thomas nodded. "We protect our own. Just follow Rob's lead in court." As the days passed, Maya prepared meticulously for the hearing. She reviewed the security footage countless times, practiced her responses to potential questions, and selected her outfit carefully, professional but not flashy. The night before court, Officer Taylor's testimony from the deposition arrived. Reading his embellished account of their interaction, Maya felt her blood boil. He described her as behaving erratically and claimed she'd been hostile from the moment we approached the vehicle. She set the papers down and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, the officers would tell their story under oath. They had no idea they were walking into a trap of their own making. For the first time since this ordeal began, Maya allowed herself a small smile. They thought they were the hunters. They were about to discover they were the prey. The law office where the depositions were scheduled had the feel of old money, dark wood paneling, leather chairs, and oil paintings of stern-looking men on the walls. Maya sat beside Rob at one end of a long conference table, a court reporter set up in the corner. The room smelled faintly of furniture polish and expensive cologne. "Remember," Rob whispered as they waited, "let me do most of the talking. Just answer what's asked, nothing more." Maya nodded, smoothing down her navy blue blazer. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, professional but not flashy. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her only jewelry a pair of small pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother. The door opened, and Officer Brennan walked in with a lawyer from the police union. He wore his uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. His eyes flickered over Maya before he sat down across from her. "Officer Brennan," Rob began after the preliminaries were complete, "could you please describe what happened on the night of April 15th when you pulled over Miss Johnson?" Brennan leaned slightly toward the microphone. "At approximately 10:45 p.m., My partner and I observed Ms. Johnson's vehicle roll through a stop sign at the intersection of Maple and Oakwood. We activated our lights and initiated a traffic stop. And then what happened? Rob asked. Upon approaching the vehicle, I detected the smell of alcohol. Ms. Johnson's eyes appeared bloodshot, and her speech was slightly slurred when I asked for her license and registration. Maya kept her face neutral, though her stomach tightened at the lies. She wrote a quick note on her legal pad. No alcohol. Came straight from work. Rob nodded slightly to show he'd seen it. And did you administer a field sobriety test? Yes, we did. Ms. Johnson performed poorly on several elements, particularly the walk and turn test. Another lie. Maya had completed every test perfectly. And at what point did you decide to arrest Ms. Johnson? Brennan shifted in his chair. When she became combative and reached for something in her pocket, which turned out to be her phone, we became concerned for our safety and placed her under arrest. The deposition continued for another hour, with Brennan painting a picture of Maya as uncooperative and potentially dangerous. When Rob asked about the body camera footage, Brennan explained that both his and Officer Taylor's cameras had malfunctioned that night. A coincidence that both cameras failed? Rob asked. Equipment issues happen, Brennan replied with a shrug. After a short break, Officer Taylor arrived for his deposition. Shorter than his partner, but with the same air of authority, he repeated almost verbatim the same story Brennan had told, with a few notable differences. Officer Taylor, Rob said, consulting his notes, you mentioned Ms. Johnson stumbled when exiting her vehicle, but Officer Brennan didn't note this in his report. Could you clarify? Taylor paused, a flash of uncertainty crossing his face. She was unsteady on her feet throughout the encounter. Rob made a show of checking the police report. That's not mentioned anywhere in the official documentation. Must have been an oversight, Taylor said. The inconsistencies continue to pile up. Taylor claimed Maya had refused to take a breathalyzer test at the station. Brennan had said she was never offered one. Taylor said she'd yelled profanities. Brennan had described her as coldly defiant. Through it all, Maya took careful notes, occasionally sliding observations to Rob, who used them to formulate his next questions. When Rob brought up the possibility of racial bias, Taylor's face hardened. This has nothing to do with race. We enforce the law equally. Then perhaps you can explain why 78% of your traffic stops this year have involved drivers of color in a district that's only 32% minorities. Rob asked. I don't keep track of those statistics, Taylor replied, his jaw tight. We stop people who break the law. Like running stop signs that security footage shows they didn't run? Rob asked mildly. Taylor's eyes narrowed. What footage? Rob smiled. We'll get to that in court, officer. As they wrapped up for the day, Maya caught Officer Brennan watching her with a puzzled expression. She knew what he was seeing, not anger or fear, but calm confidence. It clearly bothered him. Outside, as they walked to the car, Rob chuckled. They can't even keep their stories straight. Did you catch Taylor's face when I mentioned the security footage? Maya nodded, allowing herself a small smile. They think this is going to be easy. They think I'm alone. Rob opened the car door for her. Little did they know what's coming. The courtroom fell silent as Maya made her way to the witness stand. She wore a charcoal gray suit that she normally reserved for high-level briefings, her hair pulled back neatly. As she placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, she caught Officer Brennan whispering something to Officer Taylor in the front row. Please state your name for the record, the court clerk requested. Maya Johnson, she replied, her voice clear and steady. Rob approached, looking confident. Ms. Johnson, can you tell the court what you do for a living? Maya took a deep breath. This was the moment they had planned for. I work for the federal government. Could you be more specific? Rob prompted. I'm a senior intelligence analyst with 15 years of service. Officer Brennan shifted in his seat, his brow furrowing slightly. This wasn't what he had expected. And where exactly do you work, Ms. Johnson? Rob continued. Maya reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder. I work for the Central Intelligence Agency. I have for the past 15 years. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The judge tapped his gavel once, restoring order. Your Honor, I'd like to present these documents as evidence, Rob said, taking the folder from Maya and approaching the bench. The judge examined the papers, his eyebrows rising slightly. He nodded and handed them back to Rob, who then presented them to the prosecutor. The prosecutor's face paled as he flipped through the pages. For the record, Rob announced, these documents confirm Ms. Johnson's employment and security clearance level with the CIA, as well as her spotless professional record. Maya watched as Officer Taylor leaned forward, trying to get a glimpse of the papers. The smug expression he had worn throughout the trial was replaced by uncertainty. Ms. Johnson, Rob continued, on the night in question, where were you coming from? I was returning home from a late briefing at headquarters, Maya replied. The nature of the briefing is classified, but I can confirm I was there from 7 a.m. until approximately 10:30 p.m. And had you consumed any alcohol that day? No, Maya said firmly. I've never had an alcohol problem, and in fact, I rarely drink at all. My position requires regular and random drug and alcohol testing. I've never failed a single test in 15 years. The judge turned to Maya. Ms. Johnson, can you explain why you didn't identify yourself as a CIA employee to the officers during the stop? Maya nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Agency protocol specifically advises against revealing our employment during routine civilian interactions, including traffic stops. Doing so can create security risks and is generally discouraged except in genuine emergencies. She turned slightly to face the jury. I followed proper protocol both during the stop and afterward by notifying my security officer about the arrest within the required timeframe. The prosecutor stood up, looking uncomfortable. Your Honor, may we approach the bench? As the lawyers and judge spoke in hushed tones, Maya caught the eye of Thomas, her supervisor, sitting in the back row. He gave her a subtle nod of approval. When the sidebar ended, the judge looked at the officers, his expression stern. In light of this new evidence, I'd like to recall Officers Brennan and Taylor to the stand. Officer Brennan's face had lost its color. Officer Taylor was staring at his hands. They had come to court expecting an easy win against a woman they thought had no power. Now they were facing someone with the full weight of a federal agency behind her. Before we proceed, the judge continued, I'd like to review the security footage that was entered into evidence earlier. The courtroom lights dimmed as the video played on a screen. The grainy footage clearly showed Maya's car coming to a complete stop at the intersection. When the lights came back up, Officer Brennan was wiping sweat from his forehead. Ms. Johnson, Rob said, returning to her testimony, have you ever had any prior arrests or citations? No, Maya replied, not even a parking ticket. And in your 15 years of government service, have you ever failed a background check or psychological evaluation? No. I undergo rigorous evaluations every 2 years to maintain my clearance level. As Maya continued her testimony, she noticed a change in the judge's demeanor. His initial skepticism had been replaced by growing concern as he repeatedly glanced at the officers. By the time she stepped down from the witness stand, the atmosphere in the courtroom had completely transformed. What had begun as a routine case against an ordinary citizen had become a serious matter involving federal credentials, potential perjury, and abuse of power. The officers now sat rigid in their chairs, the reality of their situation finally dawning on them. They had targeted the wrong woman. All charges against the defendant are hereby dismissed. Judge Wilson's voice echoed through the courtroom as he brought down his gavel with finality. Maya closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to feel the wave of relief wash over her. When she opened them again, she saw Officer Brennan and Officer Taylor sitting stone-faced at the prosecution table. But Judge Wilson wasn't finished. Furthermore, he continued, his voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there before, I am referring this matter to Internal Affairs for a full investigation into the conduct of Officers Brennan and Taylor. The inconsistencies in testimony, the conveniently malfunctioning body cameras, and the clear contradiction between the officers' claims and the security footage are deeply troubling. The officer's lawyer leaned over to whisper something, but Judge Wilson cut him off. The court has one more thing to add. Ms. Johnson, on behalf of this court, I extend an apology for what you have endured. You may go with the court's thanks. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. Word had somehow leaked about a CIA analyst being falsely arrested. Maya declined to comment, slipping through the small crowd with Rob and Thomas flanking her. In the car, she finally let out a long breath. "It's over," Rob said, squeezing her shoulder. "Not quite," Thomas replied. "It's just beginning for those officers." He was right. Within a week, the internal affairs investigation had expanded to include not just Maya's case, but a review of all arrests made by Brennan and Taylor over the past 3 years. The pattern that emerged was undeniable: disproportionate targeting of minorities, especially women, with charges that often fell apart when scrutinized. Maya was called to give her statement to the investigators, bringing along her meticulous documentation. In a sparse interview room at police headquarters, she faced a team of 3 investigators, 2 men and a woman, all with the weary eyes of people who had seen too much. Ms. Johnson, the lead investigator, said, "Your case has opened the floodgates. We've had 17 people come forward with similar stories about these officers." Maya nodded, unsurprised. "I had resources and support. Most people don't." "No, they don't," the female investigator agreed, which is why this is so important. 3 weeks later, both officers were placed on administrative leave. The local papers ran the story on the front page, though they didn't mention Maya's CIA connection. Her agency had made sure of that. Instead, she was described simply as a federal employee whose case revealed a pattern of misconduct. The emotional toll of the ordeal caught up with Maya in unexpected moments, a sudden racing heart when she saw police lights, waking up from dreams of being handcuffed again. She started seeing a therapist cleared by her agency, working through the lingering trauma. "You turned something ugly into something meaningful," her therapist told her during one session. "Many people will be spared what you went through because you stood your ground." 6 months after her arrest, Maya sat in a conference room at CIA headquarters, presenting a new protocol she had developed for employees facing law enforcement encounters. Thomas and the agency director listened attentively as she outlined the procedures. "This isn't just about protecting our people," Maya explained. "It's about ensuring justice works the way it should." The director nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Johnson. We're implementing this agency-wide next month." That same week, Maya received word that her civil rights lawsuit against the police department had been settled out of court for a substantial sum. She donated half to a legal defense fund for people fighting false arrests. A year to the day after her ordeal began, Maya drove through the same intersection where she'd been pulled over. As she came to a complete stop at the sign, she noticed something had changed. A new traffic camera had been installed, monitoring the intersection. One of many reforms the department had been forced to make. Her phone rang. It was Tanya. "Did you see the news? Both officers were officially fired today." "Good," Maya said simply. She didn't feel joy at their downfall, just a quiet satisfaction that justice had finally been served. As she continued her drive home, Maya thought about how a single night had changed so many lives, her own included. She was stronger now, more determined. And somewhere out there, someone else would be treated fairly because she had refused to be silenced. Sometimes, she reflected, the most powerful act of resistance was simply standing in your truth and not backing down.